Good morning, rabbit lovers. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. Today I'm going to tell you guys about some of the very unlikely tools that I actually use for my rabbits every day that when I first was starting out with rabbits, I had no idea I would use so much. So obviously there are more than 3 things I use for my rabbits all the time. These are by no means the only 3 things I use, but these things are not very obvious. You wouldn't really think you would need these things when you're raising rabbits to use all the time, but I end up using them a whole bunch. So these are the 3 I'm going to be focusing on today. Let's first start with J-clips. So these are clips. There's a bag of clips. They are called J-clips because if you look at them sideways, they kind of look like a letter J. They are basically like flat little bits of metal that are curled on one end. Most people get them to like connect all wire cages. And with the clips themselves, you also kind of need the clipper thing. It's built very specially to clip it. Let's see how I can do this with one hand. Usually I use 2 hands, but one hand is holding the camera. So I have the clip inside the clippers. Basically, you'd put the wire in between and then you'd squeeze it, and then see it made a little hole. So then all the wire is both connected, both bits of wire. If you've built cages before, you know how to use these. If you've bought cages already used, you might recognize these things. You've probably seen them sitting around the 4 corners of your cages. It's very common to use these when you first build your rabbit cages or like put wire in your rabbit colony. But I am so surprised at how often I find myself coming back to these things even after I have built my rabbit cages and my rabbit colony. There are so many times when I'm attaching something like a different style of hay feeder, or I'm rearranging the colony and need to put different bits of wire somewhere, or the bedding in my colony is getting too high, I need to add more wire on top, or I need to make a little windbreak area on my cage. There are so many times when I find myself reaching for this type of tool. When I first bought these J-clips and the little clipper thing, I thought I would only use it that one time to build the one thing I was hoping to build, but I'm so glad I bought them because I've been continuing to use them over and over again, even after I've built my rabbit housing. And then here you can see when I added a whole bunch more wire it used to go just up to here, but I had to put a bunch more on because Acrobat was escaping again. I probably could have used zip ties for this, but I didn't want to waste an entire zip tie because I needed so many attachings. So I just used these little J-clips. They hold the 2 pieces of wire together perfectly. It's just so easy and so nice. Then I also used J-clips to attach the chicken wire to the actual 2x4 fencing wire so that the babies can't get out. I also used J-clips for my hay feeder. I had a whole bunch of weird random bits of wire that was the right size, so I J-clipped them all together into 2 rectangles. So I have like a little rectangle here and like a weird square over here, and different bits I all J-clipped together to make one big piece. There's little clips everywhere. Okay, the second thing is zip ties. Many of you guys already know that zip ties are your best friend when you are homesteading. And for a while, I didn't even try using zip ties because I thought they were plastic and the rabbits would chew them. So I would just use other things and not even try using zip ties for rabbits, though I love using zip ties for other things. But one day I was rushing to do a project and the zip ties were just right there and they were super easy to do, so I grabbed them and tried them, and my rabbits don't chew them. I don't know if it's just because the area where the zip ties are so hard to get to, or if my rabbits like have enough enrichment and are like in colonies or tractors, or have toys in their cages or whatever, so they're not super bored, so you don't like need to chew on them because they have other stuff to do, or if they just don't notice that they're there. But I haven't had no issues with them chewing the plastic. These are kind of similar to the J-clips, though sometimes I still use the J-clips for certain projects, and then other times I'm using these. But oh my gosh, these are so useful when I'm attaching things, or if like something breaks, I'll like zip tie it together, or zip tying wire to T-posts. That's super useful. So I always make sure I have a good supply of zip ties. As you can see here, I've used the zip ties to attach the cage to the T-post. Most of the cage is attached on the back, but it was kind of sagging, so I have T-post to kind of hold it up. As you can see, the like end is kind of a little bit chewed, but the actual like thing holding it together isn't chewed at all, even though there are 2 rabbits who could possibly access it. And it might be hard for you guys to tell because I have this wire attaching the plastic to the fence, but this zip tie is actually holding the cage, like attach it to here. If this zip tie wasn't here, the cage would like fall down and like break. So I'm actually using zip ties. Well, it's zip ties and wire to hold the cage, like to connect the cage to the fence, which is holding it up. Okay, now we are to the last thing. I don't really have a good name for this. It's just like, it's wire. It's like kind of painted black, so it kind of rubs off on your hands and gets them a little black stained. See this little stain? But it's like metal wire that's bendy, and with metal wire you need like wire snips, so make sure you have those. But oh my gosh, this is so useful as well. I guess all of these things are for like attaching things together. The J-clips attach things, zip ties attach things, and this wire attaches things. But there are so many different situations with so many different things that break, or that I'm adding or taking off or switching, that I find myself reaching for each of these different tools for unique situations. And this wire is super good for obviously attaching most stuff, but I also like using this wire for like if I need to make a lock or like a latch or something. I'll have like a bungee cord, and then I'll use this to make like the thing that the bungee cord hooks into. Or sometimes I will take 2 screws and like screw 2 screws, then wrap their wire around it to make a little like a loop thing, so I can like hook something onto a piece of wood. This is super useful when you need like to make a little hanger or like a little hook. So if I need to hang a feeder or something, I can bend this wire into a little hook shape and then like put the feeder on the hook. This is a bit more versatile than these other 2 things. Though these things obviously have their place, I find myself using this for a lot more than just attaching things. These Angora cages are a great example of using these little bits of wire. I have this black plastic covering the Angoras to like keep them like safe from wind and rain and wet and stuff. And I've used these little wire clips to attach the plastic. I'll like have a little length and then thread it through, then tie it in a little like twisty thing. I have those all over, like all over here, all over the front side, all down here. I've also used this wire as little hooks. The front flap of this plastic is hooked to the wire down here. So when it gets super hot in the summer, I can flip the flap up, but because it's cold in wintertime, it's flapped down and hooked onto the bottom. Here's an example of a more hook-like thing. So I have this like hay feeder that's attached to this cage. The rabbits can eat through the wire over here. And then I fill it up through the outside, and I've hooked this little wire hook. I have like 3 of them. One on this side, one on this side, one on the bottom, hooking it to the side. And it makes it super easy that it's a hook, because then I can just hook it off and take it off when I'm done, or hook it back on if I need to like fix it or something. I didn't like permanently wrap it or anything. I just made a super easy on and off hook. Here is an example of what I was talking about the 2 screws and the little thing. So this bungee cord hooks on one side to this thing, and then this is a door. And the other side, it needed like a little latch hole thing to hook onto. It's a little place to hold the bungee cord. And then over here, I guess this was before I was using zip ties to attach wire to T-posts, because I used actual wire to attach it to a T-post. It's a little more time consuming because you have to like bend it and then twist it. A zip tie, you just go bzz, and it's easy. But using wire to attach it still does work. Here's another good example of a hook. So I had this broom. I don't really use it that much anymore, but I used to a whole bunch. I did not really have a good place to store it, so I made a little hook on the little hole in the end, and I just hook it up here, and it hangs right there. So whenever I need it, I'm in the colony, I just reach up and grab it. Super easy. I use these things so often that I make sure to have them in this shelf that's super easy to get to. As soon as you walk into the garage, they're right here, so I can grab them all the time whenever I need them. Some of these things used to be housed in other more hard to get places in the garage, but I have moved them to this super easy shelf. They're all right here whenever I need them because I find myself using them so much. So there you go. Those are 3 of the tools I reach for my rabbits all the time that I really didn't think I would ever need to use much. J-clips, zip ties, and thin metal wire stuff that I still don't have a good name for. Now, of course, there are plenty of people who get along just fine with raising rabbits without using these things, but my life in my raising rabbits and taking care of them and like fixing things and switching things and rearranging things would be so much more difficult if I did not have these tools. And I'm so grateful that I do have them. And I would really suggest that anyone raising rabbits would have these on hand. They really are way more useful than you would at first think. Thanks for watching.